What's going on, guys? Welcome to the video. So Darren Grimes appeared on the Politics Live show earlier today with host Joe Coburn, the LBC presenter Iain Dale, Boris Johnson supporter Nigel Evans, TUC General Secretary Francis O'Grady, and Deputy Opinion Editor of the Financial Times Miranda Green. As you will likely know, Darren is a Leave campaigner who was fined £20,000 by the Electoral Commission for misreporting campaign spending before the 2016 referendum, and has since been the subject of a targeted campaign by the heavily Ramona-biased Commission. This is the guy that the Electoral Commission has investigated 3 times at a cost to the UK taxpayer of £500,000, because this guy ticked the wrong box and is a Leave campaigner, I guess. They knew for 2 years that this had happened and ignored the fact he had ticked the wrong box until it was needed to fine him 20k, which is the maximum for an individual, I must point out. Seems fair, don't it? Let's check it out.
Going to move on, I'm going to welcome in Darren Grimes into the studio. He ran the Brexit campaign group Believe and spent around £680,000. It was really a sort of youth-centred part of a Brexit campaign. Welcome to him. Darren, happy birthday. Well, you were fined by the Electoral Commission, as you well know, of £20,000 for false declarations of campaign spending. You appealed and you won that appeal. How do you feel now?
Excellent. I mean, I was completely exonerated. The judge, this wasn't a reduction of a fine. This wasn't the judge saying that the decision was unreasonable. This was the judge quashing their entire notice. 3 years of my life have been absolute hell because of this quango, which is incompetent and not fit for purpose. And I feel that a massive weight has been lifted off of my shoulders.
It was also referred to the Metropolitan Police. What's happened with that investigation?
So, the Metropolitan Police wrote a very stinging letter, I don't know if anyone saw it, to about the Electoral Commission, saying that their investigation, they hadn't handed over documents, relevant documents. You know, if you can't disclose key evidence that could indeed exonerate me further, then you've got to ask what this commission is doing.
And is that going to continue, that investigation?
I have no idea.
Right.
My solicitor has wrote to them today saying that the judge has completely quashed this notice and therefore, you know, what stage are we at?
How much did it cost? No, you and them. Go on.
So, I mean, £500,000 the Commission has spent. Taxpayers' money. I fundraised, so I will always be eternally grateful to everyone online who donated and allowed me to get to this point where I've cleared my name. But I fundraised £95,000 online. Right,
and just separately, to be clear, Vote Leave was found guilty of breaching electoral law in terms of campaign spending and fined £61,000. They decided to drop their appeal. Why?
Well, the money. It's expensive to do this, right? I mean, I would have went bankrupt had I lost this. And some people, you know, aren't in a position where they've got nothing to lose, which I didn't have anything to lose. So it was all or nothing for me.
So Darren points out he was completely exonerated by the judge of any wrongdoing, before stating the Electoral Commission is incompetent and not fit for purpose, which I would have to agree with. To waste that much money on a £20,000 fine is completely insane. It's as insane as the Tommy Robinson case was, a complete waste of money and a politically motivated stunt. If the first investigation could not pin any wrongdoing on him, then it should have stopped there. But of course, this is a Ramona organisation with a grudge to settle, so they did not care about how much it costs. It's not their money after all, is it? It's only the UK taxpayers. Joe Coburn points out it was referred to the Metropolitan Police, which is still ongoing, but of course they did not find any wrongdoing, and instead wrote a scathing letter to the Electoral Commission, as Darren points out, and you can see it on the screen now, because the Electoral Commission refused to hand over documents and had obtained evidence by means that are against police rules, so therefore could not be used in criminal investigations, obviously. The police investigation should be dropped now anyway, as he has been cleared, but we will have to wait and see. Nigel Evans asked him how much it had cost to fight this politically motivated case, which he states cost him £95,000 that he had to crowdfund to be able to pay it, because obviously he's just a kid. I think he was only 22 at the time. So in total we are talking £600,000 spent, at least, because the Commission has a vendetta against this guy and Brexiteers in general. Because he was the founder of a group who campaigned to leave the EU, and obviously Leave won the referendum in 2016. It's pretty obvious what this is. Joe Coburn points out an organisation was fined £60,000, which should really show you how biased the Commission was against Darren Grimes. 20k for an individual when you fine an organisation only £60,000 seems like a personal vendetta to me. But let's move on to the next clip anyway. It gets better.
You have said that the Electoral Commission isn't fit for purpose. You don't think it is a substantial organisation. What do you think, Francis, listening to this now that this has actually been dropped or you've been cleared? Do you agree that the Electoral Commission isn't fit for purpose?
I think we're seeing a pattern of attacking institutions rather than maybe recognising that the job of this institution was to investigate. You may not have been happy about it, but actually you then appealed, you got the result you wanted. And I think some of it was actually about you were suggesting the bar was set too high in terms of the forms you had to fill in. You know, I mean, welcome to the world of claiming benefits or whatever it might be. These things are. But I think it's a bit sad to talk about conspiracies all the time. You know, instead of recognising.
Three goes.
What I would say to that is 3 investigations. They cleared me twice. They opened a 3rd investigation after pressure from wealthy Remain activists. And I don't think it is a conspiracy theory.
Well, can you prove that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes,
okay,
there was a judicial review by the Good Law Project, which is led by a wealthy Remain QC, and after that, the Commission opened a 3rd investigation. Now, that to me isn't coincidence.
And they haven't even properly closed it, because after you were acquitted totally and exonerated, they then said, well, we're now considering an appeal.
Right.
My goodness me, after £500,000. This is taxpayers'
But are we
money.
saying, but hang on, let's go back. Are we saying that he didn't right to investigate in the first place, Miranda, that there wasn't cause? You obviously have been exonerated, as you say, but was there reason to investigate when Vote Leave, separately, had been found guilty of breaching spending limits?
I think that's the key question, and I would say yes. I think it's very important that we have public trust in the processes of democracy. And so we mustn't lose sight of that. There's clearly a question about the decision to pursue Darren in this way, but there's not a question about pursuing Vote Leave, which is a large organisation which does actually have very, very good funding from enthusiastic backers of Brexit. So no, but it did at the time. I mean, let's face it, if they wanted to fight it in the way that you fought it, they would be able to find backers to do it. So I think that the suggestion that Vote Leave is some sort of, victim in this is a bit ridiculous. But I do think it's important that we think about the role we want the Electoral Commission to play in the future, because there's all sorts of ways in which it actually has quite inadequate powers. It can only go after people retrospectively. It can't prevent the wrong sort of interference with political process. We need to have a conversation about online political advertising. We need to have a conversation about your ability to lie in political adverts in the way that you can't in commercial adverts. I think the whole thing actually is up for discussion.
So, Joe Coburn states that Darren thinks the Electoral Commission is not fit for purpose, which, given what we have heard in the first clip, that's not up for debate anymore. They are clearly a very biased, politically motivated organisation that has no qualms about wasting public funds to pay for their politically motivated attacks on individuals like Darren. Of course, the commie cumbucket Francis is also a full-blown Remainer with extreme Brexit derangement syndrome, so she tries to defend the Electoral Commission, claiming people are just attacking organisations. No, love. People are calling out these corrupt bodies that waste public money to attack their political opponents. It's nothing to do with them being attacked. If they act like snivelling shitweasels, they deserve to be called out for it. Her claims it's their job that they have to investigate is correct, but she is ignoring the fact that they came after this guy 3 times. It was not 1 investigation, it was 3. Showing a consistent pattern, if you ask me. They kept trying until they got somewhere. Sounds like a targeted campaign, as I've said. She accuses him of claiming it's a conspiracy, when he never said that at all. It does not look like a conspiracy, it looks like they were after him directly, which is exactly what it is. Darren and Iain Dale both point that out. It's so blatantly obvious by the amount of times they tried to get him, and how the Electoral Commission caved into pressure from wealthy Remoaners in regards to the 3rd investigation. What would you call that, Francis, if it's not a targeted, politically motivated case by a bunch of Remainers against a young Brexiteer? Likely in the hope of dissuading other young free-thinking people from having a voice about Europe. Nigel points out the Commission actually wants to appeal against the court's decision to exonerate Darren at yet more cost to the UK taxpayer. Now, if that's not clear bias with a goal of destroying this guy's life, I really don't know what is.
It's a question of proportionality, isn't it, though?
Yes,
because if they fine Vote Leave 61,000, they're fining someone who was at that time 22 years old, the maximum fine possible for an individual, 20,000, for ticking the wrong box.
Right, but there are rules and regulations, aren't there, and there are breaches, and we don't exactly know, it hasn't been proven exactly why the Electoral Commission did then pursue further in terms of your case. And it is also true that the Electoral Commission have fined other parties. I mean, is there this feeling that this is somehow a Remainer conspiracy, which is what you seem to say, because they also fined the Liberal Democrats £18,000 for failing to deliver complete and accurate spending returns during that same referendum.
They knew where Darren hadn't ticked that box twice.
Right, well, hang on.
They knew.
If you look at the makeup of the board of the Electoral Commission, if you want to see a conspiracy, it's very easy to do so.
But that's different from saying there is a conspiracy.
Also, if you broaden this out a bit, you look at how they failed to control the postal vote situation, where there is widespread fraud of that. They have proved themselves to be an incompetent body. No heads will roll over this. There ought to be heads that roll. But no one will take responsibility for this, and they will just carry on as they were. We didn't have this problem.
Do you think we
when
need
electoral?
one?
We need something. Whether we need this type of commission, I don't know. Because when electoral services were under the Home Office, I don't remember any of these problems happening.
I mean, I completely agree with Miranda that we need openness and transparency in this, and the Commission never ever suggested that I was anything other than open and transparent throughout the 3 investigations. But you cannot have this quangle that is judge, jury and executioner being the provisional wing of the Remain campaign.
But that's the point, because they fined the Liberal Democrats, as I mentioned, but they also fined the official Remain campaign, now known as Open Britain, £1,250 for wrongly reporting its spending. So it's difficult to see how somehow this is, as you say, an arm of the Remain campaign.
So, yes, but 3 investigations into the same matter. They didn't do that with Remain. It's an extra level of burden and pressure applied to those who campaigned for Brexit. You see, there are still investigations open now, 3 years on, into prominent Brexit activists. That, to me, suggests there is a vendetta here.
Francis?
Well, like I say, I think you need to dial down the conspiracy stuff. I don't think that's good for democracy. I think you need to respect, we do need
Francis,
institutions.
with respect.
I am not necessarily saying there are all sorts of institutions in Britain who sometimes may get it wrong, and in your case, you've won your appeal.
They've got it wrong,
Absolutely. I think I'd give you more credit if my family hadn't been hounded for 3 years, if I hadn't been hounded, if people hadn't been tweeting me on a daily basis saying, I hope you get raped in prison.
Right.
That is because of this quangle, that commission, and I think Iain's right, heads should roll.
We're going to end it there. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Darren, for coming in.
So in that clip, Iain Dale points out what I've already said. The fact that they fined a 22-year-old guy 20 grand and an organisation 60 grand is not proportional, since it was the maximum fine possible, as was already stated. Joe Coburn then attempts to defend the Electoral Commission, saying they have fined other parties for things using the Liberal Democrats as an example, which further proves Darren, Iain and Nigel's point. They fined the Lib Dems, a mainstream Remona party, £18,000. But this lone guy, with no party support, £20,000. Does that seem like a proportional and fair ruling to you? I'm also sure if they investigate the Lib Dems and find nothing wrong the first time, they won't go after them another 2 times for the same thing, will they? Fuck, you're an idiot, Joe. Nigel rightly points out they knew in advance about the mistakes on the form, as we've already heard, and did nothing until it served their political agenda. Before Iain Dale points out their complete failure in controlling the postal vote, which we all know from the Peterborough by-election, proving they are an incompetent body, which, to be honest, we really don't need any more proof of. After about 2 minutes of this video, it was kind of obvious. The biased Electoral Commission has actually shown it's almost on par with the BBC. Darren calls out the Commission for being the provisional wing of the Remain campaign, while being the judge, jury and executioner regarding these matters. Joe comes back with the weakest defence of these scumbags we have seen yet. They fined the Remain campaign £1,000. Are you actually stupid, or just reading the script you need to follow? I don't see how any of the fines you have claimed prove the Electoral Commission's impartiality. When Remain campaign gets £1,000 fines and the Lib Dems get £18,000 fines, the Brexiteer campaign gets £60,000, and this guy gets 20 grand. That really looks fucking impartial, don't it? No bias towards Remain at all with them figures, Joe, is there? Darren should have pointed that out. But going back to his point about 3 investigations is realistically proof enough. They are another wing of the Remain campaign at the end of the day. Francis goes back to the conspiracy nonsense in an attempt to devalue his claims when he never said that, when he never said he doesn't agree with oversight. He just disagrees with heavily Remain biased oversight that is still targeting Brexiteers to this day. He points out his family have been hounded because of this vendetta against him. Of course, When he points out that Remainers on Twitter are saying they hope he gets raped in prison, Francis shuts her fucking mouth, and Joe Coburn quickly ends the segment. I wonder why, Joe. Did you not want your beloved lefty fuckpigs on Twitter getting called out for what you accused Brexiteers of? Should have expected nothing less, really. Well, that was a disgraceful performance from Joe and Francis there, trying to defend this body with a clear bias using complete bullshit and figures that actually prove Darren, Iain and Nigel's claims of a targeted attack against Brexiteers. It's priceless if you ask me. Darren did well making this completely biased organisation look exactly what it is, so hats off to him. Hopefully they will leave him alone now and let him get on with his life. I'm going to end the video there, guys. Remember to leave your thoughts down in the comments section as always. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share this video as it helps the channel a lot, and I will see you in the next one.